Welcome to the SuperAbundant Life podcast, where we teach the Bible in a simple, authentic, and practical way so that Christians can skillfully apply the Word of God to create supernatural results in every area of life. This is your host, Olaomi Brigwe. Welcome to the SuperAbundant Life podcast. I'm Olaomi, and I'll give a bit of background to the reason why I'm doing this podcast today. And I was going to say if you're Nigerian, but the truth is if you are alive, if you follow social media, Twitter, Instagram, etc., then you most likely would have heard about the EndSARS, what would I call it now? Protest, the trend, everything that was happening in Nigeria over the course of maybe a couple of weeks, and which led to protesters being shot, etc. Some murdered, some injured by the military in Nigeria at Lekki. So you're saying, how does this apply to what I'm talking about today? Well, I'm getting there in a second. So I remember that particular day, the morning after. So this happened. So the Lekki toll gate shooting, where, as I said, even though the Nigerian army have basically denied it, they said they had nothing to do with it, etc. But essentially, men dressed as soldiers turned up where there were peaceful protesters. That basically were unarmed, that were not violent, that were basically just quietly protesting, and they opened fire on them. All right, so that was essentially what happened, which is like the peak of the whole thing had been building up, etc. This happened on a Tuesday, I think, around 7:30 p.m. Nigerian time, and I didn't actually find out any of this. So for some reason, I didn't really get onto social media until the next morning. So early the next morning, I was on social media and I was like, what's going on? What's happened? And obviously, so many videos, it was extremely emotional. It was extremely emotional, and I have to tell you, I'm not a crier. I don't cry. In fact, I can count on one hand. Literally, I'm not even exaggerating. I can count on one hand the number of times I have cried in the last 10, 20 years that I remember. I don't cry. It's just not me, as in I don't cry. But on that particular morning, it was just so, I was like, the situation was just so hopeless. And oh my God, how can people be this wicked? I don't get it. How can you do this? I thought we had moved on from the whole military regime where, people could do anything they wanted. I thought we had, do you understand? It was just so hopeless. And it wasn't like I was bawling or anything, but the tears just came. I'm like, oh my God, what? As in, for me, the question I was asking was, what can we do? As in, what can I do? As in, we can't just leave this thing as it is. We can't just take this and just move on and say, it's sad, and then not do anything and just move on. But the enormity of the situation, like, who am I, little me? As in, I don't even have access to any of these people, president or whatever. As in, even the whole trending on social media, the whole world was talking about it, etc. It still did not. It still seemed as if it had been in vain, whereby soldiers would turn up and just kill innocent citizens. I'm like, even the things that we thought we could do, which is post on social media, share, etc. That people thought was making some kind of an impact. See how it ended and see where it led to. So I just felt so hopeless about my beloved country, Nigeria. And I was like, God, this is hopeless. What can we do? There's nothing that can be done. We just need to accept this thing as it is, because it is systemic. This is something that has eaten into the very fabric of the country, of the culture. And I'm like, God, this is just hopeless. There's nothing that can be done. And these were my thoughts. And in the midst of all that, I remember I was actually sitting in my car. In the midst of all that, I just heard a voice, like an impression within me. And this is what God said to me. And he said to me that, you say, what can you do? He said, if every single person will do their own part. So he was basically saying, start from where you are. Start from where you are with what you have. Right? If you look at the whole country, if you look at the whole of Nigeria, and around that time, all sorts of stories were popping up around Africa as well, of all sorts of violence as well. So if you look at the whole thing, for one person, it's like, listen, this is beyond me. I can't do anything. I've done what I thought I could do, and it's not helping. And God said, no, if every single person that has this desire for change and for transformation will start from where they are, with what they have, and will not give up and will continue to do what they can with what they have, that is how change and transformation comes. And that was what God said to me. God said, listen, you can sit there and complain and say this is hopeless, it will never change, but you can also recognize the power that you have uniquely as a human being, as someone that carries the Spirit of God, and think, what have I got in my hands that God has already given me that I can use to begin to make some form of impact? And if enough people do that, then that is how you change society. That is how you change cultures, etc. And that's what I decided to do. But beyond all that, I'm just telling you the background to this particular episode. And it got me thinking, and following on from that, I began to think about, it's true. Do you know, it's actually true. I could sit down and say, well, I have this dream to do this, to build a business. I have this dream to lose weight. I have this dream to raise my kids a certain way. I have this dream to build a house, or whatever it might be. And I could look out at the prospect of me actually achieving those things, and I could say, oh well, I'll do it someday, or oh well, this is too big, what can little me do? And I will never ever reach it, because I haven't recognized the fundamental truth about how powerful a human being is when they come to that knowledge that wherever you are, there's something in your hands that you can always start with. So I began to think that life is never hopeless. God never puts us in a hopeless situation. He says that there is no temptation that will come near you, or any kind of trial or anything like that, that God has not already made a way of escape. Meaning there is already a way out. I may not immediately see it, but there's something that has already been created in order for me to be able to enter into that thing. And so that's what led me to this episode today. And from, talking to my clients, talking to people that I coach, talking to people that I engage with, talking to even friends, and even by observation of my own life, I've come today to talk about why this whole idea of someday, you have a dream, you have a desire, there's something you truly want to do, but you've told yourself, you've managed to convince yourself that, well, someday I will do it. Or, like I said in the intro, the sister to that is, I do not have time as yet, or I do not have the resources as yet. But if you think about it, if we say we are Christians and we take the word of God as our guide, look throughout scripture. God always started with a human being with whatever they had in their hands. He told Adam, he said, listen, I created you, human beings, dominate the whole earth, do this, do this, do this. But where did God start them off? The garden. He said, tend the garden, cultivate it. So he started them off in the garden, right? Think about Jesus. Jesus started in a small town, and then as he continued to do the miracles, then his fame spread throughout. The same with John the Baptist. Think about Peter. Peter got up, preached one sermon to the people that were around that had gathered, and then it began to spread and spread and spread. Paul, I mean, throughout the Bible, we see exactly the same thing. And literally, God told Moses, what do you have in your hands? So God used the rod in Moses' hands to go and defeat an entire system of slavery. Do you understand? So it's like, if we see it all over the Bible, it's there. It's there. So what I'm going to be teaching about today is why, what I'm hoping to do is to, awaken, just to shake you a little bit. All right, to those things that you may have been putting off. And I'm also speaking to myself, the things that we have been, putting off, saying, I'll do it someday, or I don't have time, I don't have the resources. No, you do. The Bible says now is the day of salvation. Today is the day of salvation. It says, as long as this is called today, there's something that I have within me that I can immediately begin to take action, begin to take steps forward towards that big dream that I desire. So what I'm going to be teaching about today are four reasons that hold us back. Genuine, right? They seem genuine and real to us, and how to overcome those 4 reasons so that the illusion of someday, the illusion of I don't have what it takes, I don't have the time, I don't have the desire, is completely broken away from your mind, and you can begin to move forward. You can literally begin, and you can start where you are with what you've got. And did I mention Joseph? How could I have left Joseph out of that list? Joseph, he had a dream to become, for his brothers to bow before him, etc. Right? But where did he start? He was in Potiphar's house. He started there. Right? He started there. He was in prison. He was still faithful. What about David? David in the back of the wilderness, where he was forgotten. Nobody really rated him. And I could go on and on and on. Okay? So I'm going to be teaching from the Bible today. Actually, I'm going to take a story from the Bible, a teaching from the Bible, and I'm going to highlight those 4 reasons, the 4 main reasons, the roadblocks that keep us thinking someday, someday, right? And to keep postponing life, basically, and just time is passing. But because we have this someday mentality, we just allow time to pass without really taking charge of our time. Okay, and the story that I'm going to be sharing, or that I'm going to be teaching from, is in 1 Samuel 30, which is David and his battle against the Amalekites. So I'm going to read, teach. And remember, I want to highlight 4 main reasons, right, why we keep putting things off. Some may call it procrastination, but this is even deeper than procrastination. Procrastination is just a fruit. It's just a type of what I'm talking about today. It's deeper than procrastination. So what are the 4 reasons why we keep, postponing our dreams and saying someday it will happen? And as I give each reason, I will also give you a very specific, practical, what's the thing now? Practical way, practical tip, strategy for you to be able to overcome it so that you can begin to move forward. Remember, tell yourself someday will never come. All I need to do is to start from where I am with what I have. All right. So 1 Samuel 30 says from verse 1, 3 days later, when David and his men arrived home at their town of Ziklag, they found that the Amalekites had made a raid into the Negev and Ziklag. They had crushed Ziklag and burned it to the ground. They had carried off the women, the children, and everyone else, but without killing anyone. So basically, David and his men had gone off in trying to fight a war against Israel. Long story, I'm not going to get into all that, but they basically turned their back and said, no, you can't come with us. So by the time they got back, he and his men got back to the town where they were living at the time, with all their wives, their children, their livestock, everything they owned was in that town. Amalekites had come and they had raided the town. They had burnt it. They had carried everything of value and every single person in the town, and they had carried them away. Okay, now this is where I'm going to start. Let me continue reading. It says, verse 3 of 1 Samuel 30, when David and his men saw the ruins and realized what had happened to their families, verse 4 says, they wept until they could weep no more. They wept until they could weep no more. It says in verse 6, David was now in great danger because all his men were very bitter about losing their sons and daughters, and they began to talk of stoning him. But David found strength in the Lord. Now, it says what? When they saw the magnitude of the problem, or let me flip it. When they saw the magnitude of the desire, the first reason why we don't move forward, why we postpone our dream, is there's an emotional response. So it says here that they wept. They're like, oh my God. They didn't spring into action. The first response was an emotional one. It was the same way I felt when I was seeing the NSAS protest and all the event around NSAS unfolding. I was like, this is just hopeless. There's nothing that can be done, right? You have this dream. There's something you want to do, but you may have tried a couple of times and it just looks so far away, to the point where you just say, well, I really truly desire this thing, but it is out of my reach. There's nothing I can do. All right. So it's the weeping. That was the first response. It was the weeping. Now, the thing about it is, why do people stop here? Okay, why do we stop at that emotional reaction where, you talk to someone and you say, oh, that thing you wanted to do, the business you wanted to start, the house you wanted to build or to buy or whatever it is that fell through the first time around, and you talk to people, oh, the promotion you were going for, and they respond emotionally and they say, well, you know what, I tried, it didn't really happen. There's so many things that are happening. It's just so overwhelming, and they can truly tell you and give you reasons why it cannot happen. So their emotions have been engaged in that particular thing, and to them it just looks impossible. Now, why do we stop there? Because it's soothing. It's even tranquilizing, because it feels good to convince yourself that, do you know what? I'm not really putting it off. Right? I'm not putting it off, but I'm just waiting for the right time. That's what that first emotional response, because you're sort of, comforting yourself, because if you were to sit down and really think about the gravity of the thing, it's not pleasant. It's not pleasant. Do you understand? It's like saying, someone says, oh, they want to get in shape and they have 100 kilograms or something, or 200 pounds to lose. And like, rather than think about it, because thinking about it is just, you look at it and you're so far from the thing that is depressing, it's sad, it makes you sad. You're like, do you know what? I'm not putting it off. I'm not saying I'm not going to do it. I'm just saying I will do it someday. I will do it someday. Don't worry. I will do it someday. I will do it someday. All right. Because you just don't want to think about the possibility of the gap between where you are and where you truly want to be. And rather than actually taking action and beginning to, little by little, to do something towards that thing, you don't do anything at all, because you keep putting it off. Right? So that's what I mean by that. And you see, that place of like the weeping, like what David and his men did, it's a difficult season or place to overcome. It's a difficult place to overcome, where you are discouraged, where you feel overwhelmed, where you feel like everything is against you regarding that particular matter, right? it's just like it's more comforting for me not to think about it. It's more comforting for me to just put it aside and say, do you know what? It will happen. One day it will happen, right? It's more comforting to do that. But we all know that that's not going to get you moving. It's not going to get you moving, right? If you say it will happen and you never think about it, how are you going to get to something or achieve something or overcome something or transform something if you don't think about it? If you keep putting it aside and say, it's fine, we'll sort it out later. No, you will later will never come. Someday will never come. So you have to face it. You have to get to the point where you actually face it. And how do you do that? So if this is the stage where you are regarding that dream, regarding the thing you want to change in your life, right? Regarding the thing you want to overcome, what does the Bible say? The Bible says that David found his strength in the Lord. David found his strength in the Lord. So in this place, in this very emotional place where it's painful, where you know what you want, where you know what you desire, but to even think about it, it's almost, you almost go crazy in your mind, like, oh my God, when I think about this thing, I just get depressed. So I'm not going to think about it. No, it says you have to go to God and find your strength. And find your strength in Him, in the place of praise, in the place of worship. And I promise to give you practical strategies. This is where you take that situation to God and you begin to praise Him. You begin to say, Father, I thank you because I know that you have already created a way of escape. I know you have already created a path for me to get from this situation where I don't want to be to that situation that seems so far away and impossible to me where I truly want to be. Because the truth of the matter is you must find a way to lift your soul, to lift your emotions from that place of dejection, from the place of hopelessness to the place of peace and joy regarding that situation. Because the mercy of God operates in the place of peace and joy. Do you understand? If you are depressed about it, if you see the situation as hopeless, how will God get His advice, His instruction, His wisdom to you to get you there? Do you understand? So you have to lift your soul out of that place, like in the pit. You have to consciously and deliberately, right? Deliberately. And I think it is KJV that says David encouraged himself in the Lord. You have to consciously lift your place out of that place of discouragement to the point where you're like, listen, my soul, you must trust in God. To me, all right, in my own strength, this thing looks absolutely impossible. It looks depressing. It looks like I will never do it. But if God is my strength, if God is my helper, I certainly know that it is not impossible. So you encourage yourself. Don't allow yourself to stay in that pit of depression. Okay? Don't allow yourself to stay there. Consciously lift yourself to that place by literally speaking words, taking that situation to God and praising Him for it and say, Father, I thank you because this is where I want to go. This is the desire that I have. This is what I want to transform about my life or about my situation. It looks completely impossible at the moment, but I know with you, nothing shall be impossible. And I rejoice in you because you have already created a path for me to get there. And I thank you because every single day you are showing me the path to get there. You are giving me instructions to be able to get there. You have to maintain that sense of gratitude and confidence in God if your quote and unquote someday is ever going to come. All right. If you don't do that, you will find yourself in that emotional pit of depression or discouragement regarding that situation, and you will never ever take that step to move forward. So that's the first one. Where your emotions are completely entangled in a place of discouragement and overwhelm, etc., regarding that situation, and that is how you overcome it. So let me keep reading. It now says, in verse 7, okay, I'm reading 1 Samuel 30. Remember, I'm using this to teach this. It says, then David said to Abiathar the priest, bring me the ephod. So Abiathar brought it. Then David asked the Lord, should I chase after the band of raiders? Will I catch them? And the Lord told him, yes, go after them. You will surely recover everything that was taken from you. Aha. Which brings me to the second reason why we put things off, why we say someday I will achieve that thing. Oh, someday I will do it. Oh, someday it will happen. Or I don't really have time now to start that business. Listen, one day, something that you truly, do you understand? As if some magic fairy is just going to pop up from nowhere and come and drop it in your laps. The way you know that someday will never come is because is how you've been saying someday for a while now. Yeah, you've been saying someday for months, possibly even years, and this someday has still not arrived. Yeah, in fact, most likely the thing has gotten worse or has gotten farther away from you, from where you started, right? So that's how you know that this someday thing is an illusion. It's like a mirage in a desert, where a man that the sun has scattered his brain in the desert from the heat starts seeing pools of water and runs into it and jumps into the pool of water, and it's only a mirage. That's all someday is. That's all I don't have time. That I don't have time on is also a serious illusion, because the thing you truly want to do, you always find time. Okay, so the second one is lack of clarity. This is the second reason why we don't truly go after the things that we want. It's a lack of clarity. I mean, David, even after he had encouraged himself in the Lord, even after he had gotten his mind to the place where it's like, with God, nothing is impossible. I know I can achieve this. He still didn't move. He still didn't move because he did not have that assurance, the clarity that he was meant to go after that thing, that he was meant to go and get his tool. You might think, oh, how can you not know? No. Listen, you have to bring yourself to that place of assurance. You have to know within yourself, especially as a Christian, that God is for you in that situation. Don't just take it for granted that the Bible says, oh, by the stripes of Jesus, I am healed. And you want, to receive healing in your body for some kind of physical sickness or something. Don't just take it for granted. You have to take that scripture to God and ask God to open your eyes, to bring you to that place of assurance that not only is He able to heal you, but He has guaranteed that you personally will be healed of that thing, or you will get that promotion, or you are going to end up building that house. Or do you understand what I mean? You need that personal assurance. So clarity, or lack of clarity, I should say, is the second reason why we put things off. Because if you have gained clarity, you begin to attract opportunities in your environment that will help you move forward. And that's why in GEMS, which is my transformational coaching program, which, by the way, is opening up very soon, literally in a couple of weeks. Before the end of November, we're going to be opening GEMS up for about a couple of weeks. Once a year, we do that for the group coaching. So if you've been waiting to jump into GEMS, this is your opportunity. We do it once a year. The next time that I'm aware of, all right, is going to be a year from now. So one of the reasons why clarity is a massive module in GEMS is because if you don't have clarity, you literally become stuck. You can spend years in a place saying, oh, what do you want for your career? And then, well, I just want to do well. I want to earn more money, and this person keeps saying the same thing every year, right? When they set their goals, or should I say resolutions, right? They'll say, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to achieve. But if you come back a year later and you ask them, okay, so have you made any progress? Like, no. Why? Because they have no clarity. They don't have clarity. And I'm not just talking about clarity in terms of knowing what you want. It's also clarity in terms of knowing God's mind regarding that situation. These are things that we literally walk people through in GEMS, in the clarity module. It's not just about, listen, number one, no, I should say 99, in fact 100% of everyone that goes through GEMS, by the time they've done half of clarity, which is for them to actually describe in detail, because that's what we get you to do, to literally to be able to paint an accurate picture of what you want. Most people, in fact, did I say most? Every single person that I've coached have never really sat down to do that exercise. And there's like, wow. Then on top of that, you also need the assurance that God is for you. Do you understand what I mean? It's not enough to read in the Bible, my God shall supply my need, and your heart is still full of fear. You still don't believe that that's, money that you need for urgently for that thing. You still don't believe it's going to come. Even though you can read in the Bible that God says so, the assurance hasn't come. So it's sitting down and getting to the place of absolute assurance. And there are ways to do this thing. The assurance doesn't jump on you. There's certain things you need to do. Do you understand? So David asked for an ephod, which is the garment of the priest, and he went to God and he inquired of God. Now, when he gained that clarity, when God said, "Yes, I'm for you, go," he sprang into. Can you see how literally clarity got him to move? That's one of the key things that that I teach. That listen, if you gain clarity, you're about 50% of the way there. Clarity alone will get you 50% of the way to this so-called someday that you have been putting off. That is the second thing. You are not sure about this thing. You're still in like two minds about it. You're like, well, maybe, you could say, oh, okay, this is what I want. I want my income to increase. But if I asked you, this is a classic example. So people say things like, oh, I want to be a millionaire, right? They just throw out a number. I want to be a millionaire. But a lot of the people that say they want to be a millionaire, they have no clue what it means to be a millionaire. They just think it's about the numbers. But no, you have to think in terms of the lifestyle. Because you have to, first of all, become a millionaire, right? In your mind, in your attitude, in your way of thinking, in the way you make decisions, before you literally become a millionaire in your bank account. So people are only thinking about, all the zeros in my bank account, but it's more than that. How do millionaires think? What is their lifestyle? How do they live their lives? What kind of houses do they live in? Etc., etc. Right? So people say, oh, this is what I want. This is what I want to start a business. I want to move my career. But there's no clarity. And if you don't have clarity, guaranteed you won't move. Because where are you going to go? If you don't know where you're going clearly, how are you going to get there? So lack of clarity paralyzes. That's the second reason. Okay? That is the second reason why people put things off and they say, oh, someday. It's because they don't have clarity. So David overcame that by inquiring of the Lord. By inquiring of the Lord. Okay, that's number 2. Number 3, let me keep reading. I'm going to bring you now to the third reason why we put things off and we say someday. Now, rounding up on the clarity thing, there's certain exercises and things that you can practically do, but clearly I'm not going to share that here. Okay, because it's a business, isn't it? Okay. If you want, you can come into Gems, okay? But to be honest with you, if you listen to my podcast fairly closely, I talk about a lot of these things all the time. But what Gems would allow you to do is we put it in a structured way so that you can literally follow along, and there's somebody teaching you along the way and holding you accountable and providing you with support. So it's very structured, is what I mean. So let's keep reading, and I'll come to the third reason why we keep saying someday. Now, it says in verse 9, David and his men set out and they came to the brook Besor. So as we read before, as soon as God said, oh yes, you can go after them, you're going to recover everything. As soon as he gained clarity, which was a clear picture of what he was supposed to do, what he was aiming for, and the confidence that God was behind him, he sprang into action. So it now says in verse 10, but 200 of the men were too exhausted to cross the brook, so David continued the pursuit with the 400 men. Now I'm going to get my third reason from the 200 men that basically decided to stop. It says they were too exhausted to cross the brook. 200 out of 600 men said they were too exhausted. Now, the majority, if 599 men out of 600 had said they were too exhausted to cross over, then you say, okay, there's probably something here. But if 200, not even half of the men said, oh, we're too exhausted, we can't carry on, and 400 men carried on, it means that, what is going on here? All right. Now, let me explain what this third reason, let me put it into our own context. The third reason why we say someday, why we put change, transformation, the things that we truly desire, our dreams, our desires, and we put them off in the future that is infinite, that keeps changing, right? Is this. You look at the price that you are required to pay for that thing, and you feel you can't afford to pay that price. You can't afford to pay. So the men looked at the price. So there are two things here at play. You have the price, which is what is required of you, and you have the prize, which is the reward. Now, the prize was these men getting their wives, their children, their gold, their silver, whatever it is of treasure that the Amalekites carried away. That was the prize. Now, they had clarity. So they were like, okay, yes, we know God is behind us. Yes, we know exactly what we're supposed to go and do, right? But they looked at the price, which is what it will require for them to pay in order to get the prize. And they thought, my goodness, okay, so we have to travel, God knows how many days. We just came back from somewhere. Then we're roaming all around the desert looking for these people. And then even when we find them, we need to fight again. And they basically cast their mind forward to look at what it will cost and the energy and the time and everything. They're like, oh, this is too much, I can't do it. So they're like, do you know what, we're not going, I'm not doing. So someone gets very clear in their minds, as in, I want to progress into senior leadership. This is something I want to do. I'm absolutely clear. God has given me a word. I know God has said, go for it. Right? And then they come and tell you that, okay, in order to become a senior leader in this company, this is what you need to do. You need to lead a project, and you need to do it without pay. And you're like, at first you're like, oh yeah, of course I'll do it. You take on the project, and then you now realize how extremely complex the project is. Problems popping out left and right, and like, oh my God, this is what it would take, man. Do you know what? And you just start reclining. Eventually you say, I can't do it anymore, and you hand off the project to someone else, and you basically just give up. Say, this is too much. The price that I'm being required to pay for this thing is too much. No, I'm not doing it. And that is why we put things off, and we say someday. And the third step, or the third stage for me, as with David, and what I'm showing you today, is you look at the enormity, right? It's like you're standing on one side of a river, and on the other side is a beautiful house, for example, surrounded by beautiful parks. It's just stunning. And someone said, listen, in order to go and get that house, you need to wade through this river. And you can see the river, and you're like, I can't even swim well. How am I going to cross this river? I'm not even a strong swimmer. To get there, I don't think I can make it to. I think I will drown along the way. And so he said, I'll come back, I'll try again. And one day I'll come and attempt to cross this river. And then one day never comes, or someday never comes. So, for me, I'm like, how do I tackle this thing? It looks bigger than me. It looks bigger than, as in, I'm like, I don't even know where to start. Do you understand? But if there's anything I have learned in my life, in my walk with God, that I have now relearned in the last few months of my life, weeks / early months of my life, last few months of my life, is this: When, like these 200 men, you get to that place where you look at it and you're like, oh, I can't do it. I don't have the time. I don't have the resources. I don't have the energy. I don't have the strength. I don't have whatever it is to be able to do this thing that I want. Do you know what? You need to learn to stay to what did I say at the start? Start where you are with what you have. You need to learn how to take mini steps. Mini steps. How do you eat an elephant one step at a time, or one bite at a time, I should say? How do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? One bite at a time. One bite at a time. Literally. So if you're looking at it and like, but I don't, this is too much for me. Listen, it is too much for you. You don't currently have the strength, right, to be able to achieve that thing from where you are in one swoop. All right, you can't take one gigantic step and then boom, you're there. If you could, it wouldn't be a dream. It would be something that you just literally go out and do. And I talked about this in an episode that I did, actually. Let me find it as I'm doing this. One of my recent episodes, which is episode 78. This particular one, which is also a module that we focus on in GEMS, right? Which is strategy/focus, being able to break your gap down. So where you are, where you want to be, now that you have clarity, there's a gap, right? If you look at that gap, if it truly is a dream, something that is out of your reach, you're going to feel overwhelmed. You're going to feel like, I can't do it. But the beauty of this is your strategy helps you break it down to say, okay, this is what I'm going to go after first. So episode 78, I'm not going to dwell too much on that. I break it down really, really well. Go back and listen to that if you haven't yet listened to it. Okay, that whole episode is about being able to break stuff down when it looks overwhelming, when it looks like you don't yet have the strength to do it. So that was the next reason why these guys thought, no, this thing, we can't do it. Listen, okay, I know that looking at this thing, it looks like I'm going to need an ocean to overcome, to get back into health, etc., right? Like an ocean. And you're like, oh my God, where am I going to find an ocean? But did you know that little drops of water make a mighty ocean? So you start with the little drop. And that's exactly what I did. And once I made up my mind that, listen, every drop counts. Every drop counts. No matter how tiny and insignificant it looks, it is never wasted. Every drop counts. Once I reorientated my mind to that and I began to put my tiny little drop in, I was even shocked and surprised at the momentum I gained from doing that. And that is what strategy is. Right? That's what we teach you to do in GEMS. Literally, that's what strategy is. You need to know how to put one thing in front of the other. You need to know what to do first, like a domino. It creates a domino effect. All right, that basically helps you gain momentum, and as you do that, you gain more strength. You can take down bigger things until you look up and you're like, oh my goodness, I have an entire ocean. But if you stand and you keep thinking, oh my God, ocean, you will never move. You keep putting it off because, for very good reason, it is overwhelming when you look at it from where you're standing at the beginning. So these 200 men, they cast their minds forward and they thought, oh my goodness, I don't have the strength to go after the Amalekites, even though I really, really would like my wife and children back. I'm not going. And isn't that the same thing that Pharaoh did? Moses went to Pharaoh and said, let my people go and I will remove the frogs. Pharaoh looked at it, prize, no frogs, because the Bible says the frogs were everywhere, in their beds, everywhere, coming out everywhere they looked. They were smelly, stinking, ugly frogs, right? The prize would be that the frogs would be gone at the click of the fingers, I should say. But what was the price that he had to pay? He was going to lose his labor force, right? He wasn't just keeping the Israelites because he was being wicked. Do you understand? That was his he was using them as slaves. They were building Egypt like, oh, lose my labor force or get rid of the frogs. I don't want the frogs. And do you know what his response was? Is exactly what I'm talking about today. He said, tomorrow. He put it off. So when the price you have to pay is so big, you're like, no, how can I let go of the entire labor for slaves that have been building for us? No, I can't. It's too much. Moses, go away. Come back tomorrow. Do you understand? And the way you overcome that is what I have already explained. All right? That's what I've already explained. And the final one, let me keep reading, and then I will come to the final reason why we put things off and we say someday, and how you can overcome it. Right, so it says, verse 10, but 200 of men were too exhausted to cross the brook, so David continued the pursuit with 400 men. Verse 11 of 1 Samuel 30, along the way they found an Egyptian man in a field and brought him to David. They gave him some bread to eat and water to drink. They also gave him part of a fig cake and 2 clusters of raisins, for he hadn't had anything to eat or drink for 3 days and nights. Before long, his strength returned. Now, I could narrate this and tell you what happened because I know the story, but I'm going to continue reading because it's a beautiful story. Verse 13 says, to whom do you belong and where do you come from? David asked him. I am an Egyptian, the slave of an Amalekite. Now, I'll pause there to remind you that remember that it was the Amalekites that stole from David, that raided Ziklag. Okay, it says, so this guy carried on talking. He said, my master abandoned me here 3 days ago because I was sick. We were on our way back from raiding the Kerethites in the Negev, the territory of Judah and the land of Caleb, and we had just burned Ziklag. I'm sure David's ears went, like, really? Okay. Now, 15. Will you lead me to this band of raiders? David asked. The young man replied, if you take an oath in God's name that you will not kill me or give me back to my master, then I will guide you to them. And that's exactly what he did. He guided David there, and David went, and they basically, verse 70, David and his men rushed in among them, slaughtered them throughout that night and the entire next day until evening. None of the Amalekites, except 400 young men who escaped, except 400 young men. David got back everything the Amalekites had taken. He rescued his wives, blah, blah, blah. Nothing was missing, the Bible says, small or great, son or daughter, nor anything else that had been taken. David brought everything back. He also recovered all the flocks and herds and everything else. Right. Now, what is mine? You say, oh, is it just being kind to people? No. That's part of it. Be kind to people and help people. But that's not the lesson in the context of what I'm talking about today. Remember, we're talking about this dream that you have. It's a big dream. There's this change you want to make, but you think about, oh my God, this change or this transformation is too big, blah, 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 I can't do it, etc. What was the reason? What was the reason, right? What was the fourth reason, and how can you overcome it? Okay, now let me explain what the fourth reason is. Now listen to this. Now, David was on his way to help a whole town of people. So the entire town of Ziklag, including his wives, his children, the wives and children of all his men, everything they possessed had been taken. So he was on his way to go and rescue. So that was a big operation. You agree? All right. He was on his way to go and rescue a whole town of people when he happened upon one man who needed his help. Now, this fourth one is so important that if we get this, you will never be stuck again. You will never put stuff off again for the rest of your life. So it says, on his way to this big vision. So David had a big vision, okay, to go and save and rescue a whole town of people. On his way to doing that, he met one person that needed his help. Now, this is where this goes beyond, just be kind. I've actually taught about the law of kindness, how you need to stop and help people along the way. But this is what I'm saying. At the point where David met this young man, he didn't yet have what he required to solve the big vision, or to accomplish the big vision, or to solve the big problem of rescuing an entire town. Remember, he and his 400 men were literally just riding up and down, saying, okay, where can we go and find Amalekites? They didn't really know where they were. They did not have the information that would help them get to where the Amalekites were in order to fulfill that big vision. Are you following what I'm saying? In other words, the big vision that you have, you don't yet have the resources to be able to fulfill it. However, on your way, as you keep putting yourself out there, right? As you keep doing those little steps that we talked about in number 3, God is going to bring opportunities your way to solve problems on a smaller scale with something that you have to meet that need. So even though David did not yet have what he needed to solve the big vision, he certainly had what was required to solve the problem of the one man that was right there in front of him. All that man needed was some food and some water, and David, guess what, had exactly that. He had exactly that. So do you know why people keep saying someday? Why? Because they will not move until that ideal situation that they have imagined is right in front of them. They will not move. Say, do you know what? This is the kind of this is the kind of job I want. This is the kind of promotion that I want. This is, I want to start a business. And you hear this about business a lot. A business, people say, I made 6 figures in 2 seconds. 7 figures in 3 minutes. And all those things. Yes? If I don't find a business that's going to do big money, nah. I don't have time for that. Listen, I understand the whole idea of wanting to go big, as in go big or go home, right? Yeah, I get that. But nothing ever starts big. You have to build your way to big. And God will put opportunities in your path. As you're saying, God, I want to, send me. I want to reach millions of people. That's a good vision. It's a good dream to have. It's a good desire to have. I want to be able to preach to millions of people. I want millions of people to follow me when, on social media, when I stand up to teach the word, that I'm impacting millions of people. I want to be able to eradicate poverty in all of Africa. I want to be able to, erase the systematic corruption in Nigeria. Big, beautiful, wonderful visions. You will agree with me. But from where you are, you can't. And because people think until it looks like that, until I have the opportunity, until somebody comes and gives me that opportunity to speak on a platform that has those millions of people, I'm not going to move. However, the way God is going to get you to speaking to those millions of people is how? He's going to bring an opportunity where you will speak and there are only 5 people in the room. You have the capacity. Do you understand? So you say, I want to eradicate poverty in all of Africa. Beautiful, fantastic. God gave you that dream. It is valid. However, do you know what he's going to do? He's going to bring somebody into your space that can't pay their school fees. You just happen to hear about the person. The person lives in Nigeria. They've sent the child home and it's going to cost you £300 or something. £300 you can give them £300. Do you have, like Bill Gates, £3 billion pounds to be able to eradicate poverty? No, you don't. But you have £300. Now, why is this important? Why is this important to think like this? Because it was in solving the problem in his space with what he had, get this, that opened the door for him to really solve the big vision and the big desire in his heart. Had he sidestepped, talking about David now, had David sidestepped the opportunity to solve the problems right in front of him that he had the resource, the time, the energy to solve, he would never have gotten that big vision of saving the entire town solved. Do you understand? You understand? So you have to think about it, that this thing that I want, at the moment, it looks completely out of my reach. But God will not leave you comfortless. Do you know what that means? It means that no matter where you are in relation to the big vision, there's something around you that you can do. There's somebody's problem that you can solve. There's something that you can contribute that you already have the strength to contribute. You will not have to go and borrow strength to solve this problem. David only needed to give that man food and water. Do you understand? Yeah. Look at David. Sorry, not David, Joseph. He was in Potiphar's house. Did it look anything like his brothers would come and bow down to him there as a slave? Absolutely not. If God had even maybe, showed him a sneak picture of how he was going to, let's say God had even sort of shown him that he was going to be prime minister. Did Potiphar's house as a slave look anything like prime minister? No. But he thought, okay, I'm here now. Even though I'm a slave, I have the strength. I'm a young man. I have the wisdom of God. I have the integrity, to be able to help this man called Potiphar to build up his home in a way that he will be absolutely proud. And that's exactly what he did. In prison, where it even looked like he had taken millions of steps further away. At least Potiphar's house, you can say at least this is captain of the guard for Pharaoh. Maybe something can happen. Maybe Potiphar will be so impressed that he will recommend me to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh will say, okay, come and be minister of something. Do you understand? He was closer in Potiphar's house than in prison. But what did he do? He looked around him and said, this is where I am. There are problems to be solved here. And because I have the ability to solve the problem here, he interpreted the dreams of the baker and the butler with what he had right where he was. Even though it was not ideal circumstances. If you keep putting things off until it is ideal, until it looks like what you want, you will never get there. I'm telling you. This is the truth. Read the Bible. Okay, let's even leave the Bible alone. Look at your own life. You see that thing you say someday, how many of those someday things that you've not done a single thing towards just happened? Email me and tell me, contact@olaomibregwe.com. I will interview you so that you can show us how you did it so that we can do it too. But the truth of the matter is, the things that we keep waiting and just waiting until the situation is ideal and perfect, it won't happen. It will not happen. People say, until I get married, I won't. Hey? How? Until you get married, how? Until I get married, I won't really, live your life, live your life. Begin with what you have. Begin with what you have, right? Begin with what you have. You may not literally physically be able to have a child, as in if you're not married, you say I'll get married, then I'll get pregnant, have a child. But you have nieces, you have nephews, you have neighbors that have children. You understand what I mean? So some of these things, if there's a nudge, if someone comes and say, help me do something, as you're caring for someone else's child, it's not wasted. You are learning, you are gaining skills to be able to, that will help you in that when that your own vision manifests. It's going to be what's going to open the door. It's going to be what's going to open the door. So that's the fourth one, where until it looks like exactly what you desire, you don't move. But God will bring little examples and miniature versions of that thing. Miniature versions of that thing your way. And say, solve this problem, this little problem first. And you might not even at the time see the connection, right? But if you don't let those opportunities pass, the more you engage and say, listen, there's a little problem here. I have the resource to solve it. Do you understand? Why would I pass it by? Why would I pass it by? I can solve this problem. I can help this person. I can solve this problem in my life. I can, I want to be a millionaire, but I don't even, know how to do a budget. The monthly salary that I'm even receiving every month, I don't even know where that money goes. Do you understand? It's well within your power to sit down and say, okay, I'm going to at least account for how I'm spending my money now. That is well within your power. You may not be able to click your fingers right now and millions of pounds appear in your account, but you can sit down and account for how you're spending the thousands that you already have. This is how these things operate. This is how these things operate. You have to be faithful in the little. And in being faithful in the little that you have the strength to do, that is what opens the door to the plenty, to the big vision. Okay? And that's how it works. That's how it works. Someday never comes. It's an illusion. I don't have time is an illusion. You may not have the time to build an empire. Currently, I work 9 to 5. I say I'm married. I have children. I can't. Yeah, agreed. But do you have 30 minutes a day? Do you have 15 minutes a day to put towards something? So start with what you have. Start where you are with what you have. And in being faithful in where you are with what you have, that literally is what is going to open the door to the big one. And I'm going to finish up with this, right? I'm going to finish up with this. There was a time, I've mentioned this on the podcast so many times now. Let me just finish up with this, with the career, because I hear a lot of people that I engage. I don't really like my job. This is what I want to do, etc., etc. There was a time, right, in my career where I've shared before, I was going for a promotion. I wanted to be promoted. It was early in my career and I wanted a promotion into middle leadership, right? But I didn't get it. So the big vision that I had, middle leader, and it would have been something quite, outstanding, being that young. Literally, it was only my second year of teaching. It's unheard of, right? This big vision to be a middle leader. Wow, right? It didn't happen. So there was like I said, there was a river. And between me and the middle leadership, they didn't even shortlist me. So I was like what? Like, there's nothing. This is ridiculous. It looked like a golf. And God said to me, do you know what? Where you are currently, in fact, the person that got the job that I was going for came to me and said, I want you to come and work for me. I want you to help me build this middle leadership post. And I was like, me, come and help you. The job that's supposed to be mine. But God whispered to me, he said, do you know what? What she's asking you to do, even though you don't yet have the title, the role, the capacity to operate on a middle leadership scale, what she's asking you to do is to take a small part of that middle leadership role and help her with it and help her grow it and help her make it excellent. You are well within your strength, your time, your energy, your wisdom, etc. to do that, to take a small part and make it grow and make it outstanding for her. God said, do it. God said, do it. So I did it. Like David, even though I wanted to go and rescue the whole town of Ziklag, there was no path currently for me to go and rescue the whole path of Ziklag. But there was a young man beside me that was hungry, that hadn't eaten for 3 days, that needed water, that needed food, that needed medical care. And I had all those things in my possession. So I took that little farm group and I helped her grow it. It became outstanding. And that was the pathway for me to, in less than 6 months, become that middle leader. I could give you more examples in my own life, but we've run out of time. I hope this has helped you, okay? Someday is an illusion. Get rid of someday and begin today. Today. So it has been allowing me, and I pray that has helped you the same way it has helped me, and I look forward to being back next week with another episode. Thanks. Bye.